Why did Jesus suddenly go silent before the cross? There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than words. A friend stops replying. A loved one sits quietly with tears in their eyes. A father places his hand on his child's shoulder and says nothing because words are no longer enough. And then there is one of the most mysterious moments in history. Jesus went silent. The same Jesus who calmed storms with a command, the same Jesus who answered religious leaders with wisdom they could never overcome. The same Jesus who spoke life into broken hearts, opened blind eyes, and raised the dead, suddenly became silent. Why? Why would the Son of God choose silence when his life was on the line? When Jesus stood before the high priest, false witnesses accused him. Lies were thrown at him. His character was attacked, yet he barely responded. When he stood before Pilate, the governor was astonished. Matthew 27:14 tells us that Jesus gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Pilate could not understand it. Neither could the crowds. Neither could his disciples. If we were there, we probably would not understand it either, because when we are falsely accused, we defend ourselves. When people misunderstand us, we explain ourselves. When our reputation is threatened, we fight to protect it. But Jesus remained silent, not because he was weak, not because he was afraid, not because he had no answer. Jesus was silent because he had already decided to obey the Father. Isaiah saw this moment hundreds of years before it happened. Isaiah 53:7 describes him this way. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth, like a lamb that is led to the slaughter. Think about that. Jesus knew exactly what was coming. He knew the nails, he knew the mocking, he knew the crown of thorns, he knew the abandonment, he knew the cross, and he walked toward it anyway. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the strength to continue when you know your purpose. Jesus understood something we often forget. Not every accusation deserves an answer. Not every attack deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding needs a defense. There are moments when explaining yourself becomes a distraction from what God has called you to do. Jesus did not come to win an argument. He came to save humanity. He was focused on something far bigger than his reputation. Imagine the restraint. At any moment, he could have called down angels. Matthew 26:53 records Jesus saying he could appeal to the Father and receive more than 12 legions of angels. Yet he stayed silent. The one who created the universe allowed himself to be judged by his own creation. The one who formed every star allowed sinful men to mock him. The one who held all power chose surrender. Why? Because love kept him there. Every insult he endured, every accusation he absorbed, every moment of silence, he carried it for us, for our sins, for our failures, for every moment we turned away from God. Romans 5:8 tells us that God demonstrates his love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That silence was not empty. That silence was love. That silence was mercy. That silence was the sound of Jesus choosing the cross over his own comfort. And maybe that is the lesson we need today. We live in a world that tells us to respond to everything. Defend yourself, argue back, get even, win every battle. But Jesus shows us another way, a way of trust, a way of surrender, a way of knowing that God can vindicate us better than we can vindicate ourselves. The silence of Jesus before the cross was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of complete trust in the Father. And because he stayed silent then, one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. The crowd thought his silence meant he had lost. History proved otherwise. Sometimes God is doing his greatest work in the moments when we hear the fewest words. And on that dark day before the cross, the silence of Jesus spoke louder than anything he could have said.